month on Facebook, this meme started floating around where people were posting their favorite vampire movie, zombie movie, werewolf movie, monster movie, haunted house movie, and then as kind of a bonus, some people were also doing their favorite horror anthology movie. Well, since Monster Kid Radio is all about the classics and, well, sometimes not so classic, I thought it'd be fun to answer those questions, name my favorite movies in those very specific subgenre, keeping the Monster Kid Radio aesthetic in mind, meaning that these movies typically are going to take place before 1968. Starting with the first film, my favorite vampire film. Normally, you go to Dracula. I mean, that's what you'd expect a Monster Kid to do, right? Well, I am a huge Bela Lugosi fan, but I'm going to go to a different Bela Lugosi film. I'm going to go to 1943's The Return of the Vampire, directed by Lou Landers. Now, Bela Lugosi does play Dracula in everything but name only in this film. The only reason they didn't call him Dracula is because Universal was sniffing around and was threatening a lawsuit. So they changed the name of the vampire to Armand Tesla. It is a fantastic movie. It follows this vampire from World War I to World War II. It's really good, and it's got some solid performances around Lugosi. Lugosi's fantastic, as he always is, but it's also got an incredible performance by Frida Aniscourt, who plays Lady Jane Ainsley, a monster hunter, a female monster hunter in the 1940s. The movie is solid. It's got a werewolf in it as well, so you get a little bit of monster rally action. It's a great film, and that's my favorite vampire film. For favorite zombie movie, you know, if you had asked me maybe 10 years ago, I would have said Night of the Living Dead. And while I still love that movie quite a bit, I like mixing my supernatural with my undead. I like having a little bit of mysticism, whether it's voodoo or who knows what else, thrown into the mix when it comes to zombie movie stuff. So because of that, I'm going to stay on the Bela Lugosi train and go to White Zombie, the original feature-length zombie movie. Without this movie, there is no other zombie movies. The zombie movie subgenre would not exist the way that it does now if not for White Zombie. One of Lugosi's best performances. If you haven't seen White Zombie, man, you are missing out. Even it was shot partly at Bronson Caves, so you got a really cool 1950s B-movie connection there, since so many of those movies were shot at Bronson. It's such a wonderful movie, and they use the music so well, which is pretty rare for a movie that early in the 30s when they were still figuring out sound technology. Okay, it might not have been the first werewolf movie, but for me, my favorite werewolf movie is going to be Universal's iconic The Wolfman, with Lon Chaney Jr. Lawrence Talbot as a character by himself. Take away all the werewolf stuff. He's a fantastic character, a tragic hero, and Chaney imbues this character with so much empathy. You can't help but feel for the guy as he's sprouting fur, growing fangs, and going after evil and anchors. It is a wonderful film. It really set the standard for so many werewolf movies, and so many of the tropes that you get with werewolf movies came from this film. The whole silver bullet thing, silver fighting werewolves, that came from The Wolfman. That wasn't part of the lore beforehand. It wasn't the first Wolfman movie or werewolf movie that Universal did. That'd be Werewolf of London. And there were other werewolf movies as well, including some silent films. But for me, The Wolfman is tops. People who listen to Monster Kid Radio or listen to me talk for about 5 minutes can instantly deduce what my favorite monster movie is. Yeah, I love The Wolfman. I love the Bela Lugosi monster movies. I love Toho. I like giant monsters. I like all this stuff. But for me, not only my favorite monster movie, but my favorite film of all time is the classic Creature from the Black Lagoon. It's a 3D movie that's shot in 3D. It's got some beautiful underwater photography, some amazing above-water photography. Jack Arnold was at the top of his game. This is iconic Jack Arnold, iconic 1950s Universal monster movies. For me, it's also a great blend between the original Universal monster stuff. So you've got the Mummy and the Frankenstein films and all of those, and those are great. Creature can serve to bridge the gap between that kind of movie and then the 1950s atomic horror big bug monster movie. It's a neat blend. It's a nice way to kind of bring the two together. It should be no surprise to anybody why the Gill Man appears in the lineup when people start talking about the classic monster movies. He's the only one from the 50s that makes that cut. It's a wonderful suit design. It looks so good. Designed by Millicent Patrick, and really, over the years, she hasn't gotten as much credit as she should. That's being corrected now, and that's great. But her design for the Gill Man, wonderful. And of course, it's got some great human elements as well. Richard Carlson, Richard Denning, two of my favorite 1950s genre actors. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about Julie Adams. I mean, she's just wonderful. Yeah, I'm kind of in love with her. Favorite haunted house movie? That's tough. Because really, if you look at some of the older movies that were supposedly haunted house movies, they weren't really haunted house movies. This subgenre really didn't get treated seriously until something like The Uninvited came along. Before then, all of these haunted house movies were really just a guy in a mask, or they weren't really haunts. It's a comedy with maybe some spooky elements thrown in, but it's not really a haunted house movie. That said, the Old Dark House formula was established by the movie The Old Dark House, starring Boris Karloff, directed by James Whale. If you want to see Karloff at the top of his game around the era of Frankenstein, and not see him in the Frankenstein makeup, although I don't know why you'd want to not see that, it's amazing makeup, but if you want to see Karloff acting without the aid of a flat top and bolts in his neck, check out The Old Dark House, he looks great. Also, Ernest Thesiger appears in The Old Dark House as well, showing his range as an actor. Sure, he's great as Dr. Pretorius in The Bride of Frankenstein, but you can really see what he brings to the table in The Old Dark House. It's a spooky movie, it's really good, and it's a lot better than the Hammer version that William Castle directed in the 60s. Okay, bonus round. Not everybody was doing their favorite horror anthology, and I'm going to advance things a little bit. All of the movies that I've picked have been from the 30s, 40s, or 50s. I'm going to go to Amicus, which was a studio that was making movies in the UK. Kind of like Hammer Films, just not as widespread or as much money. They focused on the anthology, or the portmanteau film. And one of the absolute best is Dr. Terror's House of Horrors, starring Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, Donald Sutherland. It's a wonderful film with great music, great makeup, and it's a handful of really cool stories. You've got some voodoo stuff, you got a killer plant thing, you've got a hand running around killing an art critic. It's a really solid film. Good and spooky from beginning to end. Check it out. It's got some great Blu-ray releases that have come out over the years as well. So there's no reason not to have this in your collection. This, for me, is my favorite horror anthology. What about you? I want to know what your favorite movies in these various subgenres are. Or maybe I missed the mark and you need to let me know down in the comments below. Please like this video if you like it. And if you haven't subscribed to the Monster Kid Radio on YouTube channel yet, please consider subscribing to the video. And of course, you can hear me every week on my Monster Kid Radio podcast over at monsterkidradio.net.